Session resumed.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we take up additional reference of business and request that the Secretary General be directed to read the title of bills on first reading, as well as resolutions and communications. So move, Mr.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. Motion is approved, and the Secretary General is directed to read bills on first reading and for referral to the appropriate committees.
House Bill number 6815, an act providing an economic stimulus strategy for the effects of COVID-19 and providing funds therefore by Representative Salceda.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Bill number 6816, an act ensuring Philippine financial industry resilience against COVID-19 pandemic. Representative Kua.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Bill number 6817, an act prohibiting the discrimination against persons who are declared confirmed, suspect, probable, and recovered cases of COVID-19, repatriated Filipinos, healthcare workers, responders, and service workers, and providing penalties for violations thereof by Representative Tupas and Bravo.
To the Committee on Rules. Majority Leader.
I move to suspend, sir, for 5
Session suspended. Session resumes. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, under the calendar of business, I move that we consider House Bill number 6815 under the Committee Report number 312 and request that the Secretary General be directed to read the title of the said measure. So move, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection? Chair hears none. Motion is approved, and the Secretary General is directed to read the title of House Bill 6815.
House Bill 6815, an act providing an economic stimulus strategy for the effects of COVID-19 and providing funds therefore.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the parliamentary status of the House bill is that we are in the period of sponsorship and debate. With that, I move that we recognize that the chairpersons of the cluster on economic stimulus package, namely the Honorable Joey Salceda, the Honorable Stella Kimbo, and the Honorable Sharon Garin to sponsor the said measure. And I move that they be recognized to deliver their sponsorship
Is
speech.
there
So
any
moved.
objection? The chair hears none. Motion is approved, and the representatives Salceda, Garin, and Kimbo are recognized for speeches. The Honorable Kimbo may proceed.
In the long run, we are all dead. Mr. Speaker, if there is one quote that the great economist John Maynard Keynes will be remembered for, it is this one. And I borrow that today. Kung hindi tayo kikilos ngayon, kahit nalubayan pa tayo ng COVID, gutom naman ang papatay sa atin. Today, our economy has been stopped dead in its tracks by COVID-19. About 84% of economic sectors have completely stopped operating during the lockdown. 70% of the once-strong Filipino workforce stayed at home. A survey conducted by NADA in the first week of April showed that 25.4% of the surveyed firms had already temporarily laid off workers. At muli, kung merong isa lamang na ekonomista na dapat pakinggan para sa problema ng unemployment, si John Maynard Keynes ito. His obra maestra, The General Theory of Employment, Interest, and Money, written in 1936, was a response to the Great Depression. Ang sabi niya, para tugunan ang kawalan ng trabaho, kailangan gumastos ang gobyerno. Dito nakaraos ang Amerika sa Great Depression. And facing the biggest economic catastrophe of our lifetime, Congress must not sit idly by and allow this virus to kill our people and destroy our economy. The PESA bill seeks to restart the economy, revive business and consumer confidence, ensure business continuity, reverse unemployment trends, and redirect the economy towards a more resilient path. Now is the time to bring back what John Maynard Keynes referred to as animal spirits, which in one word means confidence. Ang pangunahing inspirasyon ng PESA, Mr. Speaker, ay ang Pilipinong manggagawa. In the short run, we must protect the Filipino worker from the risk of job loss. To do this, we must ensure business continuity. If businesses fold up, unfortunately, the first to go would be the workers, not the factory, nor the machines. Hence, we must protect the small businesses from the risk of bankruptcy. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused an unprecedented scale of economic disruption, valued at 1.2 trillion pesos a few weeks ago. Baka nga umabot pa sa 2 trillion pesos ang kawalan. The lockdown has caused the liquidity of non-essential businesses to run dry. Kahit wala silang kita, patuloy ang kanilang pagbayad ng sweldo sa mga empleyado at renta sa kanilang mga pwesto. At pag pwede nang magbukas ulit, ubos na ang kanilang puhunan. At kahit matapos na ang lockdown, patuloy ang malubhang epekto sa ilang mga sektor, partikular na ang turismo, pati ang exporters natin. Ang naging karanasan din natin sa pag-lift ng ECQ sa iba't ibang lugar, kahit pwede nang bumalik sa hanap buhay, takot pa rin ang mabas sa kanilang mga tahanan. Meron pa rin fear factor sa mga pabrika at pamilihan ng bayan. The PESA bill seeks to plug these three sources of economic leaks. To address the fear factor among workers and consumers, we propose to fund massive testing for COVID-19 as part of a proper disease surveillance protocol, including the enforcement of minimum health standards in the workplace. To address businesses' liquidity concerns, we propose transitional measures such as wage subsidies, interest-free loans, loan guarantees, grants to assist businesses to cope in the post-COVID world, and regulatory relief and policy interventions that will ease the burden of restarting, especially for small businesses. To address the long-term loss of demand in industries like tourism, trade, and transport, we propose sectoral programs that will tide them over so they can continue to significantly contribute to GDP and perform their function as the pillars of inclusive long-run growth. The PESA bill also looks beyond the short run to avert the Keynesian prospect of death in the long run. We propose structural measures which are needed to make the economy more resilient or more capable of recovering from shocks such as the COVID pandemic. Kung mangyari ulit ang isang COVID na delubyo, handa ba ang ating mga magsasaka na pakainin ang bawat Pilipino? Titigil pa rin ba ang pag-aaral ng ating mga anak? Sapat ba ang infrastruktura natin tulad ng broadband, mga kalsada at palengke, mga paaralan, mga ospital? Magiging malawakan ba ang social protection programs tulad ng unemployment insurance pag mangyari ito ulit? Maayos na kaya ang listahan ng mga nangangailangan ng ayuda? Kasama din sa PESA ang ilang kasagutan sa mga tanong na ito. The cost of PESA interventions is 568 billion pesos. Some say that amount is astronomical. We say that this is a small price to pay for our economy to be given a second chance. Huwag natin pakawalan ang second chance. Hindi lamang si Popoy at si Masha ang may karapatan magkaroon ng second chance. Ang bawat Juan de la Cruz din. But can we afford this? The short answer is yes. How can we afford this when the economic managers estimate that even without economic stimulus, the budget deficit will be 8.1% of GDP, with an expected GDP contraction of 3%, and this is way over the expected 3.2% budget deficit estimated pre-COVID. But we argue that that's precisely the reason why we need to pump prime the economy. Let us not idly accept our fate of an economic contraction. Let's spend 568 billion and immediately get back on the path to recovery. The BSP has done its part in implementing proactive monetary policy that gives banks the incentives to lend to small businesses. But despite the increase in available loanable funds for MSMEs, data from the BSP show that the amount of new loans to MSMEs dropped from 39 billion in March to only about 9 billion in April. What we badly need is fiscal stimulus to ensure that liquidity is not trapped. With more government spending, business confidence can return, animal spirits are awakened, and bullish markets can eventually return. Kailangan kumilos ang gobyerno para siguradong makautang ang mga maliliit na negosyo at gamitin ang utang sa tamang paraan. With the fiscal stimulus of 568 billion pesos and monetary policy that increases available loanable funds in the banking system by 800 billion pesos, our economy should be back on track. Beyond these technicalities, Mr. Speaker, ito ang kwento na may pagat na PESA bill. Si Tony ay may maliit na gawaan ng sapatos sa Marikina, mga school shoes, at meron siyang 20 empleyado. Nung lockdown, walang benta, patuloy ang pasweldo. Sumingil pa ng renta ang kumpare niyang may-ari ng gusaling kinatatayuan ng kanyang gawaan. Buti na lang hindi siya siningil ng bangko sa kanyang utang dahil merong moratorium. Ngayon pwede na sanang magbukas muli dahil limited na ang ECQ, pero ubos na ang ipon niya. Wala rin siyang bebentahan ng sapatos kasi wala pang school. Pag nandyan na ang PESA, agaran siyang makaka-apply muna para sa wage subsidies. 2 buwang pasweldo din ito. Pupuntahan niya ang bangko at hihingi ng restructuring ng loan para mas madaling bayaran. Uutang din siya sa Small Business Corporation ng DTI para may dagdag kapital. Mas mataas na ang gastos na ngayon dahil kailangan lagyan ng transparent separators para may social distancing ang mga manggagawa. Kailangan din ng regular na disinfection ang gawaan. Nabalitaan niya na meron din grants sa DTI na pwedeng applyan para matulungan siya na mag-develop ng sapatos na pwede isuot sa ospital na terno sa PPE. At sa pagtayo ng website para dumami ang kanyang mga customer. Ayan, may plano na si Tony, salamat sa PESA. At salamat sa PESA, di na niya kailangan magbawas ng empleyado. Sinabi ng Pangulo, change is coming. At marami ng magandang pagbaba sa ilalim ng kanyang administrasyon. Pero di natin sukat akalain na meron pang pagbabago na dadating. Itago natin sa pangalang new normal. Indeed, change comes in mysterious ways. PESA is that platform for change. Without PESA, we miss out on a huge opportunity for economic change. With PESA, we restart, we recover, and we redirect our trajectory of growth. A vote for PESA bill is a vote for new beginnings. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, next to deliver the sponsorship speech is the Honorable Joey Salceda.
The Honorable Joey Salceda is recognized for his sponsorship speech.
Maraming salamat, Mr. Speaker. Ito pong ating pong panukala ay isang inisyatibo ng buong Kamara upang ating pong mapanumbalik ang sigla ng ating ekonomiya. Tinatawag po ngayon siya bilang Enhanced Stimulus Program for Economic Recovery and Advancement or ESPERA. Next. 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 Balikan lang po natin yung 2008 para po matuto tayo, para alam natin kung anong gagawin. Makikita natin po dyan, nagsimula bumagsak sa Oktubre 2007 at yun po, lalong dumapa yung buong mundo hanggang March 2009. Pero anong ginawa ng Pilipinas sa ilalim po ni Pangulong Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo? Next. Next. Kitang-kita po natin dito ang isang V-shaped recovery. Next. Ito po ang balak gawin ng Kongreso para po sa ekonomiya ng Pilipinas. Next. Kitang-kita niyo po dyan ang tinatawag na V-shaped recovery. Kaya ng Pilipinas. Noong 2008 pa lang, January, ang Pilipinas ang isa sa nanguna na magkaroon po ng economic stimulus plan. Presenta po sa kabinete ng January 29, 2008. At yun po, pinatupad ng buong Pilipinas. Kaya makikita niyo po dito, habang lumala yung buong mundo, bumapagsak din po tayo. By 2009, nag-0.9% GDP growth rate tayo. Pero the following year, nag-8.1% GDP growth rate tayo, nag-8.0% growth rate tayo. Ang tawag po dyan ay V-shaped recovery. At ito po ang nilalayon nito pong tinatawag nating economic stimulus program. Next. Ito po yung mga palaman at halos makikita nyo po na may pagkaparehas. Unang-una, yung income augmentation, yung growth defense, yung paglagay po ng pera sa edukasyon, at saka sa food security. Makikita nyo sa mga susunod pong sponsor at mga paglalahad ng kanila pong pagsuporta na halos lahat po ng sektor pinakinggan ng kongresong ito. Next. 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 So, Para sa atin po, para mas lalo natin maintindihan, ito pong tinatawag nating espera ay nagkakalaga po ng 583 billion at ito po ay magiging 3.1% of GDP. Subalit, matitigan nito ang tinatawag na credit stimulus na hindi po gagamit ng deficit ceiling natin. Kasi gagamit po tayo ng commercial banking sector sa pamamagitan po, kaparte ng 583, ay 70 bilyon na ilalagay natin sa Philippine Guarantee, pati na po sa ating land bank para po magkaroon ng mas malago na pagpapautang sa mga SMEs, pati na po sa startup. At syempre, wala akong stimulus tulad no po ng gawa ng Pilipinas noong 2008-2009. Kaya nagkaroon tayo ng V-shaped recovery. Kundi nung panahon na yon, front-loading lang, 60% front-loading ng lahat po na infrastruktura na dati hindi ginagawa. Ginawa po noon, kaya po ang Pilipinas was able to stage one of the best victory, not only in our economic history, but in the entire world. Kaya sa akin po, to my colleagues, I ask for your support for the immediate passage of this bill. It is good for our country, and it's the right thing to do. Maraming salamat po.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the last but not the least who will deliver the sponsorship speech is the Honorable Sharon Garin.
The Honorable Sharon Garin is recognized for her sponsorship speech.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, according to Karl von Clausewitz, war is the realm of uncertainty. 3/4 of the factors on which action in war is based are wrapped in a fog of greater or lesser uncertainty. A sensitive and discriminating judgment is called for, a skilled intelligence to send out the truth. We are in a fog of war, Mr. Speaker. When a soldier is in a battle, he gets confused. There's uncertainty. He does not know his own capacity. He does not know the capacity of his own enemies. He does not know where the direction is, where his location is. There is uncertainty when you are in a war with all the dust and smog and the cloud. You can't see past the fog of war. 2 months ago, Mr. Speaker, we started the war against COVID. And we are still in the fog of war of COVID. Today, our executive, the Department of Health, is still uncertain as to the state of our constituents on the rate of infection, on how to do testing. We are still in a fog of war. The SWD is scrambling to accommodate the magnitude of amelioration that it has to give. But lucky for us, Mr. Speaker, lucky for us that the House of Representatives has a speaker who saw past the fog of war of COVID-19. Back in March pa lang, Mr. Speaker, nakita po ninyo that we have to establish an ad hoc committee, a committee to defeat COVID-19. And with that, I salute you, Mr. Speaker, because of your actions back then in March, 2 months ago. 2 months ago, you have seen past the fog of war already. Because of your initiative, you have created a committee called the Economic Cluster Committee. Lucky enough, the Economic Cluster Committee has 2 of the best economists, not only in Congress, but in the whole country, namely Congressman Joey Salceda and Congresswoman Stella Kimbo. We are lucky enough that we have people who have the capacity and the courage to determine the state of the economic state of the Philippines. From that on, we have realized what is the problem economic-wise of our country, but then came all the other members of Congress. Because of the initiatives of Stella and Joey, Sol Aragones started talking to the Department of Tourism, talking to the stakeholders for the tourism industry. Wes Gatchalian for the Department of Trade and Industry. And transportation, Congressman Sarmiento consulted with the DOTR and the state of the marine, land, and air transport. Everybody has problems, Mr. Speaker. And with that, with the strong foundations of the economic foundations of this bill, we also have the strong commitment and dedication of the other chairmen of the other committees. I would like also to recognize that Congressman Garcia and Congresswoman Tan have also pushed for the massive testing to be included in the economic stimulus. In education, the whole committee rallied for the support for the students and the education institutions. VICYA for technology, everybody, probably half of Congress, contributed and had their own insights in this bill. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I am very proud. I am very proud to be part of this bill. And I would like to show you the results of the efforts of the almost 200 congressmen who have insistently dedicated their time to create the economic stimulus bill of the House of Representatives. We start, Mr. Speaker, with the massive testing. What is the basic problem now after ECQ? People will not get out of their house, consumers won't buy, so businesses still cannot perform well, or they will close. We need to build business confidence by building consumer confidence. And the key there is massive testing. We are allotting about 20 billion pesos for massive testing. Next, we had to address the problem of liquidity of all the companies. The problem with liquidity results to unemployment, and we are risking unemployment. And we have 1 million establishments in the Philippines, and all these 1 million establishments are at risk of closing down after ECQ. So in order to protect, we structured our proposal into transitional, financial, sectoral, and structural. Transitional, just to help them go over the next 2 months, we give them wage subsidy. And we have various measures that are transitional. But you can only get subsidy from the government if you retain 75% of your employees for 2 months. Next, we go to financial. You can borrow zero interest loans, but only if you retain 75% of your employees for at least 1 year. Then you can get zero interest loans. These are all tied up in employment, Mr. Speaker. Next, we have sectoral, because we have identified MSMEs, tourism, trade, transportation, and agriculture as critical industries. This will not survive without intervention from the government specific to their respective industries. And lastly, we have structural, in which these are more long-term, in which the most important part of the structural reforms is the build. We have to infuse more infrastructure because the multiplier effect of infrastructure is one of the biggest among the industry. And it is also the biggest in job generation. Mr. Speaker, I humbly request for this body to speedily approve the proposed economic stimulus bill prepared by the DCC committee, the Committee on Defeat COVID Committee. While we are debating in this floor, we are debating in Congress, a restaurant will close because they won't have any more customers because of the minimum health standards. While we are debating here in the floor, a tricycle driver might lose his livelihood because of all the minimum health standards imposed on them, that only 50% of passengers can ride the public utility vehicle. While we delay, another OFW might be forced to come back and lose their livelihood. While we prolong discussion of this bill, More farmers might have to throw away their produce because the logistics is very poorly done from the supplier to the buyer. Mr. Speaker, to save our economy, to save livelihood, we need to pass this bill in order for our people, our constituents, to have livelihood and bring food in their table. With that, Mr. Speaker, thank you for this opportunity and good evening. Good afternoon.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the first to interpolate the good sponsor, I would like to move that we recognize the Honorable Ed Salagman of the 1st District of Albay. So moved, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Edsel Lagman is recognized for his interpellation.
Mr. Speaker,
Please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I am in favor of this measure, the PESA bill, because in fact I have authored House Bill number 6693, appropriating the amount of 1 trillion pesos for the continued emergency assistance and the stimulus package for COVID-19 response. And many of the provisions in this bill have been incorporated in the PESA bill. For example, on labor, on transportation, on tourism, on health, on the Department of Culture, on trade, like the MSMEs, among others. Truly, not since the Black Death decimated 60% of the afflicted populations in Europe and Western Asia in the mid-14th century, has a deadly contagion devastated the world with inordinate loss of lives and crippling economic downturn than the current COVID-19 pandemic. But I have certain questions to ask for clarification. So may I know whether the distinguished sponsor would yield to some interpellations?
Gladly, Mr. Speaker.
First of all, may we know how much is the total amount appropriated in PESA, spanning a period of 4 years from 2020 this year up to 2023?
Mr. Speaker, we have proposed a total amount of 568 billion pesos for 2020. And then for the next 3 years, 650 billion for infrastructure. So it's a total of about 1.3 trillion pesos.
Yes, I think it's, to be exact, it's 1.313.01 trillion pesos. Or translated into dollars, at the present exchange rate of $1 to 50.73 pesos, that would be 25,882,318,154.94 US dollars. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
The PESA should consist of 2 phases. The first phase is the continuation of the emergency assistance for social amelioration, wage subsidy, and other financial assistance to people and classes affected by the pandemic. And the second phase is the economic stimulus proper, which would be post-pandemic or should start towards the tail end of the pandemic in order to give relief to the affected businesses and corporations. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Now, for the first phase of PESA, how much is appropriated?
So, Mr. Speaker, it's about 110 billion plus 30 plus 15. 110 billion for wage subsidies, 30 billion for the enhanced TUPAD, so that's the emergency employment program, and 15 billion for students. It's an education subsidy for children of workers of critically impacted businesses, Mr. Speaker.
So it's actually 10 billion plus 110 billion plus 30 billion plus 15 billion for mass testing for 1 year.
Yes.
Subsidies, enhanced TUPAD, emergency subsidy to students respectively, or a total of 165 billion
Yes, that is
in
correct.
2020.
That is correct, Mr. Speaker.
That would also be added to that figure is 10 billion for testing in 2021. So it would be really a total of 175 billion for the first phase of PESA. Now, let me go to the second phase. How much is allocated for the second phase of PESA, which is the economic stimulus package program?
The second phase, Mr. Speaker, would include loans for MSMEs. That would be a total of 75 billion. Zero interest loans for a total of 50 billion. Loan guarantees from the Philippine Guarantee Corporation for a total of 6 billion. And then we have sectoral relief programs, again for the MSMEs, amounting to 10 billion. We have assistance to the tourism sector amounting to 58 billion, assistance to industry and service sectors amounting to 44 billion, and then for the transportation sector, 70 billion, and finally for agriculture, 56 billion pesos.
The total of those figures, distinguished sponsor, which you have mentioned, would be in the vicinity of 1 trillion 137 billion 98 million. Is that correct?
For all the items that I had enumerated, Mr. Speaker, it's a total of 423 billion.
But my figure is different, but it's close. My figure is 1.137 trillion. May we know, sponsor, while mass testing is appropriated for 2 years, 2020 at 10 billion and 2021 at another 10 billion. Do we not expect to finish mass testing by the end of this year?
Mr. Speaker, hindi natin alam, unfortunately, kung gaano katagal ang pandemya na to. Ang sabi po ng mga eksperto sa Amerika, aabutin pa tayo ng at least 1 year bago tayo magkaroon ng bakuna para sa COVID. So we would have to prepare for at least 18 months, for at least for purposes of testing. And alam naman po natin na ang dahilan po kung bakit tayo naglagay ng funding para sa testing ay para po manumbalik ang kumpiyansa ng ating mga manggagawa, manumbalik ang kumpiyansa ng ating mga consumers. Ito po ang tanging paraan para po bumalik ang sigla ng ating ekonomiya. This is the only way that we can effectively reopen our economy. So we estimated very roughly that if we would allot 2 tests for every, for say 10 million workers, Bakit 10 million po? Umpisahan siguro natin ang mga workers sa mga metropolitan areas. So kasama po dyan ang Metro Manila, kasama po dyan ang Davao, Cebu, and other metropolitan areas. Roughly po, ang estimate po namin dyan is about 10 million pesos. And of course, kailangan din po natin i-consider ang capacity ng ating testing facilities. So right now, the way we had worded provision on mass testing, it is very general, it is broad. Kung ano po ang protocols na i-recommend ng DOH, yan po ang susundan natin. And right now, ang protocol po ng DOH is that we test only the symptomatics, although they had recently issued return to work guidelines, which would also have some guidelines on the use of rapid test kits. And because rapid test kits would have a false negative rate, according to experts, of about 15%, and false positives of, say, 10%, kailangan po ng confirmatory tests ang mga yan. And of course, they would require confirmatory tests using our PCR labs. So ultimately, ang isang malaking constraint would be the capacity of our PCR labs. So at this point po, yan ang dahilan kung bakit ganyan po ang pacing na naiisip po natin pagdating po sa mass testing.
That's all right with me, that we are sending the signal to our people that mass testing will continue up to 2021. Now, may we know what is the basis of this 10 billion per year, or a total of 20 billion for mass testing?
So muli po, ang rough estimates po niyan, kung gumamit po tayo ng rapid test kits sa halagang 450 pesos each, at we allotted for repeat testing just to increase accuracy. So i-multiply po natin ang 450 by 2. And again, babalik po tayo sa estimate na 10 million workers ang umpisahan po natin sa testing. So yan po ay 9 billion pesos. And of course, for a test to be properly administered, we would also need proper training, proper equipment, and we allotted 10% for that. So for a total of 10 billion pesos.
Thank you, distinguished sponsor. But may we know whether we have defined what is mass testing in this bill?
Actually, Mr. Speaker, the provision's title is massive testing. The idea here is that we want the testing to go beyond the symptomatics. That's the main idea. Again, the rationale for that is we want to increase confidence among our workers. That's the only reason. That's the only way by which they can confidently and happily go back to work. So, again, maybe it's really to cover testing for the asymptomatics, which we feel would be mostly for workers, Mr. Speaker.
So are we not including tests for those who are not asymptomatic?
Mr. Speaker, under the Bayanihan Act, kasama po dyan ang testing para sa symptomatics. Early on, yan naman po ang naging patakaran ng DOH. Sabi nila, uunahin talaga natin ang testing po ng symptomatics. So nung pinasa po natin ang Bayanihan Act noong March 23 at naglagay po tayo ng pondo o suporta para sa testing, the premise there is that we would really focus, Bayanihan Act would focus on the symptomatics. Again, ang PESA, ang purpose po ng PESA is so that we can reopen our economy as soon as the lockdown is lifted. The idea is to reopen our economy in a safe way. Kaya po tayo naglagay po ng provision for testing. So again, the testing funding in under PESA is really intended for workers, Mr. Speaker.
Well, I think in this bill, we should give a policy direction to the Department of Health that mass or massive testing should be both for the asymptomatic and the symptomatic. so that we could cover a broader number of Filipinos for mass or massive testing. At the period of amendments, would the distinguished sponsor consider a more definitive definition of what is mass or massive testing?
Mr. Speaker, sa aming pagkonsulta sa iba't ibang mga congressman at sa iba-ibang mga sektor, yan po ay isang katanungan na lagi pong nare-raise. So sa tingin ko po, para lang matapos na po at para na rin po to avoid any confusion, maganda pong ang suggestion ng Congressman Lagman na lagyan na lang po natin ng definition sa ating batas, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, distinguished sponsor. Now, let's go to another issue. How does PESA, in amount as well as scope, compare with the stimulus packages of other Southeast Asian countries, of Asian countries, and the rest of the world?
I can share with you, Mr. Speaker, the numbers for the ASEAN countries. Ang pinakamataas po sa ASEAN ay ang Malaysia. So their economic stimulus will result to a budget deficit of 15.9% for this year. Ang Vietnam naman po, hindi po masyadong natamaan ng COVID. Kung titignan po natin ang datos, there are 0 deaths in Vietnam. Gayunpaman, naglagay rin po sila ng economic stimulus package, and this would amount to about 4.9% of GDP. So sila po ang sa ngayon ang pinakamababa. Ang Singapore po ang bansa na may pinakamataas po na number of cases per 10,000 population. Dahil alam naman po natin sila po ay nakaranas ng second wave ng COVID. And they already also have an economic stimulus package in place, and this amounts to about 7.9% of GDP. So yan po ang range sa ngayon. Kung titignan po ang midpoint sa ASEAN, it's about 10% of GDP. So yung ating pong panukala na may halagang 568 billion, sa aming computation ay nasa 6.5 to 7% of GDP, assuming modest growth assumptions. So sa amount na po na yan, ang tingin po natin nandun po tayo sa bandang gitna. Ika nga hindi naman po tayo ang pinakamagaling. Definitely naman po, hindi po tayo ang kolelat sa numero na yan, Mr. Speaker.
Well, let me just underscore that what we are appropriating for a span of 4 years is a total of 1.313 trillion, or equivalent to 25.8 billion US dollars. Now, let us go to specifics. With respect to Malaysia, the stimulus package of Malaysia is equivalent to 60.5 billion US dollars. With respect to Thailand, the equivalent is 58.3 billion US dollars. With respect to Singapore, it's 42.3 billion US dollars. And with respect to Indonesia, it's 29.1 billion US dollars. So, compared to Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore, and Indonesia, we have a lesser appropriation for the stimulus package, despite the fact that we are about number 2 or number 3 in the number of confirmed cases of COVID-19, and we are number 2 to Indonesia in the number of deaths so far. We are not going to consider anymore, say, Vietnam and Cambodia, because in fact they have 0 deaths with respect to the pandemic. I don't want to go anymore to South Korea or to Japan, USA, or Italy, Germany, UK, Spain, Australia, and Canada. They have much bigger appropriations. Now, in today's newspaper, there is an item which says that the Philippines is number 8 in Southeast Asia with respect to per capita response to COVID-19. Is the distinguished sponsor aware of this news item?
Mr. Speaker, I have not seen that news item, but I am keeping tabs on the COVID statistics among the ASEAN countries. So I know that in ASEAN, we have the second to the highest number of cases per 10,000 population. We have the highest number of deaths per 10,000 population. We have the lowest number of hospital beds in the region. We also have, although not the lowest, but one of the lowest number of tests per 10,000 population. So if we ranked number 8 in that particular news report, I won't be surprised, Mr. Speaker.
You will not be surprised, or you will be surprised, distinguished lady?
I won't be surprised.
You won't be surprised. Well, would the enactment of PESA elevate the ranking of the Philippines?
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, can you repeat your question?
Would the enactment of PESA elevate the ranking of the Philippines on a per capita response to COVID-19?
Well, to the extent, Mr. Speaker, that we have put in some amount for mass testing, and of course, with mass testing, that would mean we're able to better control the transmission of COVID-19. We would certainly, that would certainly impact on our ranking. Number 2, kasama rin po sa PESA ang ilang mga reforma sa ating health sector. Our PESA interventions go beyond the over-the-hump kind of relief measures. We also propose structural reforms, including those that are intended to build the capacity of our health sector. So sa tingin ko po, although of course, it will not be overnight na magi-improve ang ating health sector, is tingin ko naman po kahit paano makakatulong naman po ang PESA sa ating performance din po sa COVID.
Well, thank you, distinguished lady. But may I know why there is no specific amount appropriated for the continuation of social amelioration being undertaken by DSWD?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. So there are no provisions that would indicate a continuation of the kind of dole-out programs that are under the Bayanihan Act. Although the wage subsidies that we are proposing, which amount to about 110 billion pesos, would more or less have the same impact because, Mr. Speaker, ito naman po ay dediretso po sa mga empleyado. So it would be akin to the 5,000 to 8,000 peso dole-out for every household, Mr. Speaker.
Presently, under the Bayanihan Act, which is about to expire, there is a distinction between wage subsidy undertaken by the Department of Labor and Employment and social amelioration being undertaken by DSWD. Why are we not continuing with such programs? We are continuing labor's wage subsidy, but we are not continuing under this PESA bill, the social amelioration being undertaken by DSWD. I have been in consultation with DSWD when I prepared my bill, and they told me that they still need assistance from the national government, with respect to social amelioration, because we cannot completely rely on the 2019 and 2020 General Appropriations Act. We cannot milk dry these appropriations, because we would be stepping on very important and equally prioritized measures and programs.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think we have any argument as to whether or not households are in dire need of increases in their budgets. So, ang tingin kong pinag-uusapan lang natin is ang paraan kung paano natin gagawin yan. Sa ilalim po ng Bayanihan Act, ang naging approach po dyan ay dole out. So, isa po siyang subsidy sa household. Dito naman po sa PESA, kahit po ang resulta ay ganun din dahil madadagdagan po ang gastusin, ang panggastos ng mga households, ang pilosopiya po sa ilalim ng PESA ay medyo iba ng kaunti. Ang sabi po natin is tulungan natin po ang mga maliliit na negosyo nang sa ganon ay hindi po matatanggal sa trabaho ang mga empleyado. At ang mga empleyado ay tuloy-tuloy pong makakakuha ng sweldo. Ang ending po pareho, no? Kaya lang iba po ang mekanismo ng pagbigay ng ayuda sa household. Under the Bayanihan Act, ang pagbigay po ng ayuda ay dole out. Under the PESA bill, ang pagbigay po ng ayuda ay sweldo. So yun po ang pagkakaiba. Isang salita lang po ang pagkakaiba ng dalawang approach. Sustainability. Yan po sa tingin namin ang pagkakaiba. Ang sabi nga natin, yung Bayanihan Act, ang ginawa po natin dyan, dahil wala po tayong choice, we ended up giving fish to the fishermen. Pero po under the PESA Act, dahil nakakakita po tayo ng sustainability issues, ang naging approach po natin is tulungan na lang natin ang fisherman na ayusin ang kanyang lambat at ang kanyang bangka. Nang sa ganon ay maging sustainable po ang ayudang binibigay po ng gobyerno sa bawat household. Yun po, Mr. Speaker.
There is really a difference between social amelioration, which is assistance to distressed households which are marginalized, and wage subsidy to those displaced workers. But at the proper time, would the distinguished lady consider an amendment to include some appropriations to continue with the social amelioration program of the DSWD, and I have data to present that they still need the said appropriation.
Mr. Speaker, from the very beginning, we made a commitment to be data-driven in our proposals. Magandang balita po na merong datos po si Congressman Lagman, and we would be happy to see that data, and whatever recommendations you have for the purpose of helping our distressed households, we shall refer that to the committee, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, distinguished sponsor. Now, may we know why there is no specific appropriation for agrarian reform beneficiaries and agrarian reform communities except the continuation of loans of agrarian beneficiaries? Because I understand, and I have received the programs of the Department of Agrarian Reform on the stimulus package, other than continuation of loans of agrarian reform beneficiaries.
Mr. Speaker, ang layunin talaga ng PESA bill is para maitawid natin ang ating mga manggagawa, ang ating mga pamilya, para lamang po we can begin to plot our new economic destiny. So kaya po meron tayong transitional measures which are literally over the hump measures. Kaya nandyan po ang mga wage subsidies, nandyan po ang interest-free loans. Pero po pagdating po sa mga pangmatagalan na reforma na kailangan natin para sa ating ekonomiya, palagay po namin baka po that would be better discussed perhaps pagdating po ng ating mga budget hearings. So sa ngayon po, modest po ang layunin ng PESA. It's really to get through this economic crisis, which we think is temporary. Of course, inaabangan po natin ang pagdating ng bakuna, pero sa tingin po natin, if the vaccine comes in 12 to 18 months, itong krisis na nararanasan po natin ngayon ay matatapos din po sa pagdating ng bakuna. Pagdating po sa agrarian reform, pagdating po sa agricultural sector, ang nakita po namin based on our assessment is that ang pag-condone po ng mga utang ng agrarian reform beneficiaries ay siya pong isang effective na paraan para po pantawid po sa kanila in the next 6 months. And that is quite impactful because there are about, I think the total amount of loans to be condoned is something like 54 billion pesos. So napakalaki po niyan considering that we have about 2.7 million agrarian reform, sorry. The 54 billion pesos would cover about 2.7 million hectares. So, ibig sabihin po, malawak po ang sakop ng 54 billion pesos na yan. So, yan po ang naging approach po namin sa PESA.
May we know what is the nature of these loans being condoned?
These, Mr. Speaker, these were the loans that agrarian reform beneficiaries incurred through the land bank as they acquired the land as soon as the agrarian reform law was passed. So these are very long-term loans, pero marami po sa kanila that many of these beneficiaries are already in default at matagal na po silang in default. So, ang base na rin po sa consultation namin sa Land Bank, it's about time na i-condone na po ito.
Well, since they have been long in default, will the distinguished sponsor agree that the possibility of government collecting these loans is virtually nil at the moment? So much so that condonation would be required?
That is correct, Mr. Speaker.
Well, if that is so, then this will not be any relief to the agrarian reform beneficiaries. So there are programs under the Department of Agrarian Reform which would directly benefit beneficiaries after the pandemic or at the tail end of the pandemic. So at the proper time, I will be producing documents from DAR so that we could justify an amendment which would include some amounts for agrarian reform beneficiaries, which are meaningful to them rather than condonation of loans which they have not paid at all.
That would be appreciated, Mr. Speaker.
Now, distinguished sponsor, why is there no appropriation for financial assistance to local government units or LGUs who are at the forefront of helping the national government in containing the pandemic?
Mr. Speaker, admittedly, tama po ang observation ni Congressman Lagman na wala pa tayong any provision specific to LGUs other than mass testing, which we propose to do through the LGUs. Pero talaga naman pong ang LGUs po natin ay napakalaking instrumento pagdating po sa job creation. No, alam po natin na for more progressive LGUs, they can use their budget to increase employment, and that's one way for actually providing social amelioration, which is not the dole-out type. So, ano po, we've several congressmen, katulad po ni Congressman Joet Garcia, ay nakapag-propose na rin po sa amin. And kayo po, Congressman Lagman, kung meron po kayong mga suggestions din po, we would be happy to see those. Ang nasa listahan po namin ng mga possible amendments po pagdating po dyan would have to do with increasing, for example, the debt servicing. In other words, measures that will allow the LGUs to take out more loans so that they would have more resources in increasing employment, again, for purposes of economic recovery, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you for being open-minded. At the proper time, we are going to propose an appropriation as financial assistance to LGUs. Now, is there a need to appropriate a contingent fund to address the need for augmentation of funding for certain programs and projects which are not fully funded, and also to meet the need to fully serve the requirements of all beneficiaries? This is a standby fund so that the government agencies, the national government will not go back to Congress and ask for more, because there is already a contingent fund.
Mr. Speaker, that is actually a very good recommendation. Right now, what we have proposed in the bill is the creation of an economic stimulus board, which would include representatives of the implementing agencies involved in PESA, such as NEDA, DOF, DBM, etc. And one of their responsibilities is precisely to monitor not only expenditures for PESA, but also resource requirements. So maganda po na kung magkaroon tayo ng isang contingency fund, ay at least magkakaroon po ng leeway ang ating proposed economic stimulus board para sigurado pong effective na makakarating ang assistance sa mga critically impacted sectors.
Thank you again for being open-minded, and at the proper time, I am going to propose the creation of a contingent fund, which is already included in my House Bill number 6693. Now, let me go to another topic. What are the funding sources to support the budgetary requirements of PESA?
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, could you kindly repeat your question? Funding source?
What are the funding sources to support the budgetary requirements of PESA?
So we have included proceeds from bonds and loans as a possible source of finance. We also have identified savings as a result of difficulties in spending certain items. For example, Mr. Speaker, pagdating po sa discretionary travel ng ating government agencies, alam naman po natin na dahil may COVID, palagay ko kukunti na lang po ang willing na mag-travel sa ating government agencies. So, yan po ay isang source of funds. Pero naman po na ang source of funds, ang source of savings na pwedeng gamitin para sa PESA ay yun lamang activities na talagang hindi natin pwedeng gawin ng dahil sa pandemya. So, we have bonds, loans. Pagdating po sa loans, ang naiisip po natin dyan would be loans from multilateral agencies para meron po tayong softer terms. And Mr. Speaker, marami po tayong measures proposed under PESA that actually does not require a cash outlay. Halimbawa po, regulatory relief measures na siyang actually hinihingi din at inaasahan ng ating mga negosyante, particular na po yung mga malalaki na negosyo, pero critically impacted din po.
Well, it is true that with respect to some structural reforms, there is no cash out required. But with respect to the 1.3 trillion pesos, I think there is a cash required. A cash component will have to be supported. We have to support this 1.3 trillion. Now, the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank have committed grants or soft loans to the Philippines, how much would this total be?
Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, we don't have access to that information. Ang DOF po ang siya pong may but according to news items we have, based on my count, I think it's about 462 billion, which includes the 300 billion pesos which we borrowed from the BSP. So for now po, kung tama po ang aking accounting, there's about 162 billion from the various multilateral agencies, which also includes the recent bond issuance of the DOF.
Well, I think that should be included as part of our funding sources, including what other innovative measures the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas can do to help fund this stimulus package. Are we considering the sale of government assets as part of the funding source?
Well, right now, Mr. Speaker, we have not considered that option because, of course, it's probably a bad time to sell our assets. The asset prices are low. So we're better off using our financial strength. According to The Economist, tayo po, ang Pilipinas po ay isa po sa top 10 countries pagdating po sa financial health. So we are certainly in a very good position to take out loans, Mr. Speaker.
So of this 1.313 trillion, how much will be supported by loans?
Mr. Speaker, I think that is an executive decision. That should be a decision to be made by our implementing agencies. Ang sa atin po is, I think we have identified an adequate amount and types of sources of funds. At base po sa aming pagkwenta, katulad na nga po na nabanggit natin kanina, umutang na po tayo sa PSP ng 300 billion, umutang na tayo sa multilateral agencies ng 162, kaunti na lang po, aabot na po tayo sa 568 billion. So, yun po ang...
I think the amount should not be 568 billion. It should be 1.313 trillion. Because that is the total amount being appropriated by PESA. Is this not correct, distinguished lady?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, but remember that is a proposal for 4 years. No? So yung 568 billion is for this year. Yun po ang pinakamalaki po nating problema because this resource requirement was identified middle of the year. Nagkagulatan po tayo na kinailangan po natin ng ganyang kalaking pera, 568 billion, sa gitna ng taon. So yun ang pinakamalaking problema, particular na nawalan tayo po ng revenue source. Dahil po nung natigil po ang pagnegosyo, syempre po, tigil na rin po ang pagkolekta ng buwis. So yun po ang kinakaharap natin sa tingin ko po between the 568 billion that is required for 2020 and the 650 billion that is required for the next years, mas malaki pong challenge i-raise ang 568 billion for 2020. Pagdating po ng next year, assuming that makabalik na po tayo, that we have effectively reopened our economy, tuloy-tuloy na ang pagkolekta ng buwis, nagkaroon po tayo ng modest growth dahil naging patas po ang PESA bill, sa tingin ko po, kaya na po natin magbayad ng 650 billion for the next 3 years, Mr. Speaker.
But distinguished sponsor, we should not disaggregate this amount in 2 years this year, next year, and 2 years from now, because this is a total package. We are talking of an appropriation of 1.313 trillion pesos. And that is the package which should be supported by funding sources. Because this would impact, or this will be related to my next question. Under the Constitution, Article 6, Section 25, Paragraph 4, a special appropriations bill shall specify the purpose for which it is intended and shall be supported by funds actually available as certified by the National Treasurer, or to be raised by a corresponding revenue proposed therein. Of course, we're not considering the second option of, taxes being imposed, but we will have to contend with a certification by the National Treasurer. May we know whether the National Treasurer has already issued a certification, or there is a pending request with such certification as to the availability of funds to support PESA?
Mr. Speaker, we are not proposing to include or to come up with a supplemental appropriation. Ayon sa aming pag-analisa ng budget ng 2019 at 2020, sapat po ang ating appropriations. That's the reason for why there is no provision for a supplemental appropriation under PESA. And so that's the reason for why we did not have to determine the amount of cash available with the Treasury at the moment, Mr. Speaker.
We are not talking, distinguished sponsor, of a supplemental appropriation, because even the Constitution does not mention supplemental appropriation, which would require the certification of cash availability by the National Treasurer. The Constitution says a special appropriation, and definitely this stimulus package is a special appropriations bill, which would require that certification of available funds as certified by the National Treasurer. Unless the distinguished sponsor and the committee would not consider this stimulus package as a special appropriations bill. If it is not a special appropriations bill, then what is it?
Mr. Speaker, I regret not going to law school. Hindi ko po alam ang sagot po sa inyong legal question, but we will certainly consult with our lawyers, Mr. Speaker.
Well, thank you for being candid about this, but I strongly suggest that this stimulus package bill or this PESA is a special appropriations, which would require a certification from the National Treasurer on the availability of funds under the Constitution. So with that, Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Madam Sponsor, thank you very much for accommodating my interpellations and also for giving leeway to possible amendments at the proper time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Ed Salagman. Mr. Speaker, I move that we suspend consideration of House Bill number 6815. So move, Mr.
Is
Speaker.
there any objection? The chair hears none. Motion is approved, and the consideration of House Bill 6815 is hereby suspended.
I move that we suspend session for a few seconds, Mr. Speaker.
Session suspended. muna natin yun. Ano? Hanggang, kasi di ba sabi natin yung mga empleyado? Session resumed. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we consider House Bill number 6816 under Committee Report number 313 and request the Secretary General be directed to read the title of the measure. So moved, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. Motion is approved and the Secretary General is directed to read the title of House Bill 6816.
House Bill 6816, an act ensuring Philippine financial industry resilience against the COVID-19 pandemic.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, to sponsor the House Bill, I move that we recognize the Chairman of the Banks and Financial Intermediaries, the Honorable Juni Kua. So moved, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Juni Kua is recognized for his sponsorship speech.
My esteemed colleagues, magandang gabi po sa ating lahat. It is my honor and privilege to stand before you today and sponsor a bill of great significance. Mr. Speaker, this bill is a program, and this is a proactive response of Congress to the plight of the banking industry. In the light of the increase in non-performing loans of the banks, this, of course, as everybody understands, is now inevitable because of the many businesses failing to meet their maturing obligations as a result of the ECQ. The increase in non-performing loans and non-performing assets affects the liquidity, the resiliency, and the profitability, and ultimately the viability of banks, and erodes the depositors' and investors' confidence. This bill sets up the mechanism and the legal framework to address these concerns. And the FISC law has in it certain innovative features. The bill of temporary restraining orders as borrowers resisted the transfer of their assets to a special purpose vehicle. And TROs have been rampantly issued by the regional prior courts. And to address this hindrance to effective execution of the program, the FISC law will institute a new way of addressing this request for injunctions by allowing only the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court to issue them. This bill also tries to encourage the coming in of large foreign investors, which were hindered before to participate due to constitutional limitations on land ownership. We have crafted a mechanism similar to the ones provided by existing banking law that would allow foreign investors